Live from New Delhi, you're watching DDI India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Unman Bhattacharya. Coming up in the next hour. UK and France joined United States in backing a permanent seat for India in the United Nations Security Council. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says lies and slander forced him to attend the United Nations General Assembly, hits out at Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran in his address to the world body. Japan's scandal-hit ruling party elects Shigeru Ishiba as its new leader, positions the former defense chief as Japan's next prime minister. US official confirms China's newest nuclear-powered attack submarine sank in the spring this year, but neither the Chinese government nor the military acknowledges the sinking. India's decades-long push for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council just got a major boost. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron have joined the United States in backing India's bid, citing the need for UN reform. Here's a report.
India's quest for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council gains momentum. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has reaffirmed Britain's support for a permanent seat for India at the UN Security Council. Addressing the 79th session of the UN General Assembly, Starmer said the Security Council has to change to become a more representative body, willing to act, not paralyzed by politics.
We want to see permanent African representation on the Council. Brazil, India, Japan and Germany as permanent members, and more seats for elected members as well.
Earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron has strongly backed India's bid for a permanent seat on the UNSC, emphasizing the need for reforms to make the UN more effective and representative. During his address at the 79th United Nations General Assembly, Macron advocated for expanding the Security Council to include Germany, Japan, India, Brazil and 2 African nations as permanent members. Last week, the United States also voiced support for India to have a permanent seat at the UNSC. During the recently held Summit of the Future at the United Nations in New York, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi called for urgent reform of the institutions of global governance, including the UN Security Council.
Success of humanity lies in our collective strength, not in the battlefield. Our वैश्विक शांति एवं विकास के लिए ग्लोबल संस्थाओं में रिफॉर्म्स आवश्यक है. रिफॉर्म इज द की टू रिलेवेंस.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also echoed the same sentiment of reforming the United Nations and giving representation to Asia, Africa and Latin America as well as Global South in the UNSC.
Expansion and proper representation in the permanent category is a particular imperative. Asia, Africa and Latin America, the Global South, cannot continue to be shortchanged. They must be given their legitimate voice. Real change needs to happen and happen fast.
India has long made the case for joining the United Nations Security Council as a permanent member, emphasizing its significant contributions to global peacekeeping and its growing influence on the world stage. The country argues that the current 15-nation council, established in 1945, is outdated and doesn't accurately reflect today's geopolitical landscape. India last sat at the UN high table as a non-permanent member in 2021-22. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres recently sounded the alarm at the Summit of the Future, emphasizing that the United Nations Security Council risks losing credibility unless its outdated model is reformed. Currently, the UN Security Council consists of 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members elected for 2-year terms by the General Assembly. The permanent members are Russia, the United Kingdom, China, France and the United States, all of whom have veto power over substantive resolutions. Abhishek Bose for DD India.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the United Nations, where he was welcomed by strong applause. Netanyahu was accompanied by family members of the hostages who were kidnapped by Hamas and held in Gaza. Pressing for peace, Netanyahu vowed to fight terror forces to safeguard the interest of Israel.
Israel seeks peace. Israel yearns for peace. Israel has made peace and will make peace again. Yet we face savage enemies who seek our annihilation, and we must defend ourselves against these savage murderers. Our enemies seek not only to destroy us, they seek to destroy our common civilization and return all of us to a dark age of tyranny and terror.
In his speech, he also emphatically blamed Iran and its proxies for the conflict in West Asia and said that Israel was defending itself against Tehran on several fronts.
Iran directly attacked Israel from its own territory, firing 300 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles at us. I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East. Far from being lambs led to the slaughter, Israel's soldiers have fought back with incredible courage and with heroic sacrifice. And I have another message for this assembly and for the world outside this hall. We are winning.
Earlier, some hopes were raised for a possible ceasefire in Lebanon. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Friday that talks would continue despite Israeli leaders initially rejecting the idea of a truce, vowing instead to press forward with their offensive. Tripti Tripathi has more details.
While talks of a possible ceasefire being considered by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu raised hopes for truce in West Asia, the visuals on the ground tell a different story. Multiple Israeli tanks and armored vehicles have been spotted in the country's north, as military officials confirmed that air forces will continue supporting any potential cross-border ground operations in Lebanon.
Eventually, we have something that is less organized and less managed. And this we need to use. We have been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. We have an open account with many factors for many years, and at the end, we want to live here properly.
Meanwhile, in the south, a series of airstrikes targeted Hezbollah facilities, including a rocket launcher used to fire on Haifa. The Lebanese health minister has confirmed several casualties since the early hours of Friday.
Unfortunately, the attacks continue. From midnight until now, more than 25 martyrs have fallen and a large number have been wounded.
Further escalations occurred in Kiryat Atta, where Hezbollah fired rockets in retaliation for Israeli strikes on Lebanese villages, cities and civilians. In response, the Israeli army has deployed emergency medical teams and ambulances to meet any eventuality. As tensions continue to escalate in the region, Yemen's Houthis have also entered the fray, targeting Tel Aviv and Ashkelon with ballistic missiles and drones in support of Gaza and Lebanon. On the international front, ceasefire negotiations are gaining traction. Although the growing clamour for the ceasefire raises rays of hope for the civilians caught in the crossfires, the ground reality is what will ultimately define the future. Tripti Tripathi's report for DD India.
In one of the most unpredictable elections, former Defence Minister of Japan, Shigeru Ishiba, is now set to replace Fumio Kishida as the next Prime Minister of the country. Japan's newly elected Prime Minister vowed to take necessary measures to boost wages. DD India's Ayushi Bhatnagar has more.
Japan's former Defence Minister Shigeru Ishiba has secured the position of Japan's Prime Minister in his fifth and final attempt, emerging victorious in a highly competitive race among 9 candidates to succeed Fumio Kishida. The 69-year-old Ishiba will be sworn in as Japan's 102nd Prime Minister by the Diet on October 1, the same day Kishida officially steps down. In the runoff vote, Ishiba defeated hardline nationalist Sanai Takaichi, concluding one of Japan's most unpredictable elections. The final count was 215 to 194. The race to replace current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida began in August when he announced his resignation following a series of scandals that sent the Liberal Democratic Party's approval ratings to a record low. Japan's new Prime Minister vowed to take steps to boost wages while stressing the need for the country's economy to fundamentally exist a deflationary spiral.
In order to realize an increase in wages that will exceed surging cost, we aim to further accelerate new capitalism pledge. We need to fundamentally exit a deflationary spiral. Personal consumption account for about 54% of our GDP. If personal consumption does not increase, the economy will not get better. We cannot resolve the deflationary spiral.
Japan's citizens expressed hope and disappointment after Shigeru Ishiba was declared the new Prime Minister. Some expressed concern that he would raise taxes, while some believe that he will work towards gender equality.
He has the best understanding for gender equality among the Liberal Democratic Party leadership election candidates.
Clearly, now is not the time to raise taxes. I feel like people's lives are getting harder, so it's unfortunate.
On Friday, Japan's Nikkei share average also rallied more than 2%, and the Japanese yen rebounded against the dollar on Ishiba's victory. Bureau Report, DD India.
The US Defense Department on Thursday said that a Chinese submarine sank earlier this year. The sunk submarine is China's first in-class nuclear-powered attack submarine and was found alongside a pier between May and June this year. Satellite images showed the shipyard where the submarine was docked. Commenting on condition of anonymity, a US official said that China would try to conceal facts. The incident marks a major setback for China as it plans to expand its military capabilities. India's Minister for Finance, Nirmala Sitharaman, visited the Shastri School in Tashkent, Uzbekistan on Friday. During a visit, she engaged with students and teachers who shared their career aspirations and experiences of learning Hindi. The minister also signed the school's visitor book, leaving a message for the community. Still to come on DD India NewsHour. Ukrainian President Zelensky meets US Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump in New York. Britain's youngest killers in 30 years sentenced for machete attack. India jumps 42 spots in 9 years, ranks 39th now in Global Innovation Index 2024. Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Munman Bhattacharya. After meeting with US President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris and key congressional leaders on Thursday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with former US President Donald Trump on Friday to seek support for Ukraine's ongoing conflict with Russia. Meanwhile, on the battleground, Russia continued to capture settlements in the Donetsk region, while Ukraine claimed to have repelled Russian attacks. Rabindra Chauhan brings us more.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with US President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris and key congressional leaders on Thursday and presented Ukraine's position and plan and sought support for its ongoing conflict with Russia.
Right now we have to strengthen Ukraine's position on the battlefield. And that's why today I'm proud to announce a new $2.4 billion package of security assistance. I've also directed the Pentagon to allocate all the remaining security assistance funding that has been appropriated for Ukraine, period, by the end of my term, which is January 20.
Zelensky also had discussions with Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and outlined his plans for victory in the war.
This is a meeting, and we have a big race going on right now. I guess 37 days left, and we're leading in the polls, and so we'll see how it all works out. Hopefully it'll work out, but if it does, we're going to work very much with both parties to try and get this settled.
And of course, I want to discuss with you, I think, where we are together. I think we have a common view that the war in Ukraine has to be stopped and Putin can't win. And Ukrainians have to prevail, and I want to discuss with you the details of our plan of victory.
In the latest of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia continued capturing settlement in the Donetsk region, while Ukraine claimed to have repelled Russian attacks. Ukraine said on Friday a Russian drone attack on the southern town of Izmail killed 3 people and injured 14, including 3 children. Ravindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
The youngest knife murderers in the UK, who were 12 years old when they attacked a 19-year-old man in a horrific machete attack in central England last year, have been sentenced to life with minimum terms of 8 years and 6 months. The boys, now 13, are believed to be the youngest defendants convicted of murder in Britain since Robert Thompson and John Venables, both who were 11 years old, were found guilty in 1993 of killing 2-year-old James Bulger. Maldives President Mohamed Muizzu on Friday claimed that the island country has a very strong bilateral relationship with India and is planning to visit India as soon as possible. Muizzu last came to New Delhi to participate in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's swearing-in ceremony on the 9th of June along with leaders of 6 other regional countries.
So if you can just confirm if you are coming to India.
Yes, I'm planning to visit as soon as possible.
So what would be the focus of your visit, sir?
We have a very strong bilateral relationship.
India has moved up to the 39th place among 133 global economies in the Global Innovation Index 2024. In a social media post, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal highlighted the remarkable achievements under the guidance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's decisive leadership. The minister announced that India also ranks first among the 10 economies in the Central and Southern Asia region. He said India is also the first among lower middle income countries or economies and 4th in the World Intellectual Property Organization Science and Technology Cluster ranking. The minister further added that Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru and Chennai are listed among the world's top 100 science and technology clusters, and India ranked 7th globally in intangible asset intensity. India's rise in the GII ranking is notable. It climbed from 81st position in 2015 to 39th this year. India celebrates World Tourism Day on Friday. India's tourism sector witnessed a remarkable recovery in 2023 with a total of 9.24 million foreign tourists visiting the country. This represents a significant increase from the 1.52 million foreign tourist visits recorded in the pandemic-affected year of 2021. India ranked at the 39th position in the World Economic Forum's Travel and Tourism Development Index 2024. With this, the employment in travel and tourism grew by 10%, that is 8% more than in 2019. So on World Tourism Day 2024, India celebrated its diverse and thriving tourism sector in New Delhi. With a focus on peace, sustainability and rural empowerment, leaders unveiled key initiatives to boost tourism in India. Here's a report.
On the occasion of World Tourism Day, Vice President of India Jagdeep Dhankar inaugurated the event, joined by Civil Aviation Minister Kinjarapu Ram Mohan Naidu and Tourism Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat. The leaders spoke about India's strides in tourism, highlighting how the sector fosters cultural exchange and global peace. The Vice President declared tourism a key driver of India's economic growth, emphasizing its potential to promote international goodwill.
On the occasion of World Tourism Day, and it is very significant for the entire planet because it connects those bonds of humanity which are much needed at the moment. My greetings. This is an event to celebrate the profound impact of tourism on global economic development, social progress and cultural exchange. Transformation that has taken place in last decade by doubling the number of airports, having world-class infrastructure of connectivity, railroad, various facets of it, highways, express highways that match the best in the world.
Minister of Tourism lauded the government's decade-long efforts to reform tourism. Significant investments were made to upgrade transportation infrastructure, including the incredible India 2.0 campaign and the introduction of e-visa facilities, which are attracting more international visitors. Ecotourism and sustainable practices have also been prioritized.
Tourism is the sector which connects us all and bridges out the gaps between the cultures and the nations. पिछले वर्षों में जिस तरह से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में भारत की तरफ देखने का नजरिया बदला और भारत को एक मोस्ट डिजायर्ड डेस्टिनेशन के रूप में स्थापित करने में हमें सफलता प्राप्त हुई है.
Minister of Civil Aviation spoke on the role of aviation in tourism, emphasizing the massive expansion of airport infrastructure in last 10 years. Strengthened safety regulations and sustainable aviation practices are crucial as air travel continues to be a fundamental link in boosting tourism.
The very essence of tourism is the ability to explore and experience different places, and it is here that I believe aviation has a very important role to play. Since the aviation ecosystem serves as a reflection of the hospitality a country extends from the moment a traveler departs from his home, and it's crucial that we assess the steps we take to elevate India's aviation sector to global standards.
Two key initiatives were digitally inaugurated by the Vice President of India, Paryatan Mitra, Tourism Friend, and Paryatan Didi, Tourism Sister, aiming to train local guides and empower women in the tourism sector. Additionally, rural and adventure tourism initiatives were launched, promoting diverse landscapes and cultures, further positioning India as a global tourist hub. Kriti Vadhera's report for DD India.
Under the Make in India campaign, several schemes are underway to ensure quality assurance of the defence products. On the 68th Raising Day of the Quality Assurance in Indian Defence, DD India correspondent Vishal Baristo speaks to the Director General Quality Assurance on the steps taken to reduce inspection time and grant greater autonomy to supplies by private Indian companies.
India is focusing on Make in India campaign as far as armed forces are concerned, and we are now exporting the equipments to 90 countries, and this is the ultimate all-terrain off-roader. This is called the Specialist Mobility Vehicle SMV 1200. But this is not the only one that has been put on display here. Today we are celebrating the 68th anniversary of the DGQA Day, and I have with me the DG. Let's talk to him and find out. So when we talk about the Make in India campaign, I can see a lot of companies, they are also here, and they've joined hands with the armed forces. Now talking about this very unique snowmobile, it is also made in India. So how many companies are now into military production?
The number of companies, if we take, it's all in thousands. So because it varies from the large industries to the medium industries and MSMEs, small scale sector. So according to the type of products and the extent of the technology involved, the various companies are participating in this thing. Yes, while if we look at it, only the defense public sectors and the government agencies were making the defense products. Now the situation has changed with the new government, Atmanirbharta Bharat, and in which all private industries are encouraged to participate in the defense production. There are various targets have been already fixed for the large amount of exports to be taken place, and we are on the job.
So there you heard from the DGQA, India is now competing with the international market. The large companies from India, they are competing in the international market, and this is a very good news as far as the Make in India campaign is concerned.
Now let's take a look at some other stories making news. India's Minister for Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal attended the 14th CSR Leadership Summit 2024. He congratulated all the winners who made a difference in society. Piyush Goyal said that the Indian ethos is always related to giving back to society. It comes from the heart. It was never a compulsion. India's investigative agency NIA conducted searches across 2 districts of Jammu and Kashmir in the Riyasi pilgrims terror attack case. The locations searched by the NIA teams for residential premises of hybrid terrorists and overground workers. The Climate and Health Solutions India Conclave, co-hosted by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Asian Development Bank, concluded in New Delhi on Friday. The 2-day conclave focused on the urgent intersection of climate change and public health in the country. The 8th meeting of the India-Myanmar Joint Trade Committee was hosted by India in New Delhi on Friday. The primary focus of the meeting was to discuss potential areas of cooperation like shipping, textiles, health, power, transport and connectivity. British actress Maggie Smith, known for her roles in the Harry Potter films and Downton Abbey, has died at the age of 89. A legend of British stage and screen, Maggie Smith won 2 Oscars, one for The Prime of Miss John Brodie in 1970 and the other one for California Suite in 1979. She had 4 other nominations and received 8 BAFTA awards. Let's now take a look at some other stories making news around the world. Ornithologists and conservation volunteers descend on a former salt lake in southeastern Montenegro to tag and identify migrating species. Conservationists captured a variety of birds in their nets, including kingfishers, willow warblers, spotted flycatchers and little ringed plovers. The Tunisian parliament plans to alter its electoral law just a week before its presidential election, leading to widespread protests against the controversial last-minute move. The opposition and civil society groups suspect a rigged election aimed at keeping President Kais Saied in power. Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer called for his fellow countrymen to vote for him at a parliamentary election on Sunday. It's a tight race between his ruling Conservative Austrian People's Party and the far-right Freedom Party. The far-right party is critical of Islam and wants to stop granting asylum. 50 immigrants were rescued on Friday off the coast of Spain's Gran Canaria. 2 women and 1 minor were on board the wooden boat that was towed to a port by the Spanish Coast Guards. Over 26,000 migrants have arrived illegally in the Canary Islands until September 2024. Time for us to take a breather. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Analysis on India winning more backing for a permanent seat in the UNSC. What transpired at the second Indian Ocean Rim Association seminar held in Goa.
On multiple hats in the Indian sports bodies and the international sports bodies.
It's for India is very, very important for us, and it's not only to me but for the country.
To act as a catalyst to put yoga on a different level.
It's a pet project as far as the Prime Minister is concerned. He himself is very keen on yoga and is always there promoting yoga.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Munmun Bhattacharya. And to discuss the growing support for a permanent seat for India in the United Nations Security Council, we are now joined by Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya. He is former Secretary MEA, and soon we expect to be joined by Dr. Swasti Rao, Associate Fellow, MPIDSA. Ambassador, welcome to DD India News Hour. 4 out of 5 P5 members we know have supported India's bid for a UNSC permanent seat. You would recall that a few days back, a UN summit document called for the Pact for the Future for the first time has a detailed paragraph now calling for UN reform. Now, India, we've heard, has said that it looks forward to the start of text-based negotiations in a fixed time frame. So, do you think that this will reach the logical conclusion?
Well, I think the Summit for the Future has actually come out with very substantive outcomes in terms of the consensus document that you referred to, the Pact for the Future, along with its annexes on the digital as well as the Declaration for the Future Generations. Now, the operative parts of this are in the 5th section, which is regarding the reform of global governance, in which 3 paragraphs, particularly 3 action points, particularly refer to the question of Security Council reform. And in that context, it calls for action in that particular area, including speeding up the process of intergovernmental negotiations. Now, as you know, when Prime Minister Modi spoke at the Summit for the Future, he had articulated this very important need. And prior to that, at the bilateral summit that he had with President Biden, this was also enunciated by the American side. Subsequently, at the Quad summit, the Quad leaders meeting, this was again reiterated that there was urgent need not only for the reform of the United Nations Security Council, but also that there should be specific place for countries like India and a few others. At that point of time, the summit, the UNGA process was on, and in the last few days, we have seen several countries, including the United States, France, and Britain, who are, as you know, members, permanent members of the Security Council, who have come out in support of India in specific terms. This is to add to the force that Russia, as you know, has also always supported India's candidacy. The only stumbling block, and they have been blocked, is that of China, which has not yet explicitly spoken about its support for Security Council reforms.
Okay, so let's take the bull by its horns. Dr. Swasti Rao is with us. Dr. Rao, talking of challenges to India's permanent membership, like the ambassador mentioned, China's opposition, or call it unwillingness to endorse India's position, is one such major challenge. Is this opposition surmountable?
Good evening to you, Munmun, and good evening to Ambassador Bhattacharya as well. This opposition that we get from China, surmountable. So you could have a situation where India is made a Security Council member, but may not have a veto power. And if a situation like that arises, because the other members, the other permanent members, Ambassador Bhattacharya also mentioned that we have had consistent support from France and Russia always, but now you also see Britain joining in. Yesterday, the British Prime Minister came out in unequivocal terms about how he feels that India should be at the high table. Not just that, when Prime Minister Modi went to the US, you saw that the US has also been supporting it. So you have all the other members supporting India's bid, but you have China that has the veto power. And in many ways, that has become the undoing of the United Nations Security Council. That the United Nations Security Council, the permanent five, will never really let a reform happen because of this veto power, which was basically given to them to ensure there was peace and security and stability in the world. But you see that the veto power is being used for everything else but that. So I could foresee a situation. We also know that there are about a group of 4 countries that have a very strong candidacy when it comes to United Nations Security Council, Germany being one, Japan being another, India has also been one of them. And everybody supports the role of India except for that one country called China. So if India does become a United Nations Security Council member but does not have the power of veto, it would in effect mean that it would not really be a consensus of equals. It would not really be a club of equals. And in that regard, I think it would only be done at the level of optics. It would not really be enough to really solve or to really take the conversation on stabilizing world security or providing innovative solutions to world security in any way. To what extent can this be surmounted? Or can this be surmountable? I would have my reservations because, like I said, that it's a very structure that has actually been its undoing. And I kind of, just reiterate that. However, everybody understands, Munmun, that today the United Nations is defunct. The United Nations is not able to rise to the occasion. United Nations, there is a crisis of multilateralism per se. And all of that is happening because the world is so fragmented. And that fragmentation is reflected in the composition of the United Nations Security Council. And it is also not reflective of the world order that we are entering in. Okay, it only reflects the world order of the post-1945 situation, which is like so many years ago.
Yes.
So everybody understands that. But because of that undoing of the veto power that China has, there seems to be little that one can do about it.
Okay.
I would perhaps think that taking it a step at a time in a way of an incremental improvement by getting the other people in, even if without a veto, we should try. And
let's
not
take this
close our
up,
doors
Dr. Rao, the issue of the veto power that you are talking about. Ambassador, some parties and Dr. Rao also reflected that have raised the prospect of India gaining membership without veto power. Now, you know that the 7 Uniting for Consensus, also known informally as Coffee Club members, have advocated addition of non-permanent members, and we know UFC opposes expansion of permanent seats in the UNSC, but G4, including India, want reform in both categories. Does such advocacy by UFC or those who raise the issue of India getting a permanent seat but not veto power complicate matters, or does it simplify matters?
So let us first recognize that the multilateral institutions, essentially the United Nations, is in coma today because it is unable to react and respond to the grave challenges that we face both on the peace and security front as well as on the front of sustainable development. And we are slipping on the SDGs as well. But let us look at the issue of peace and security, because that's what the United Nations Security Council particularly focuses on. And we've seen that this particular coma that the multilateral system is in is largely because of the use of the veto. Now, you are aware that, one of the lacuna of the League of Nations, which is the earlier body born after the First World War, was sought to be corrected by having a more decisive action and a more decisive role of so-called leading players in the global system. and the 5 were then selected with the veto powers. But as Dr. Rao also mentioned, today's situation is dramatically different from that of 1945. So we have seen a new reality of which there are new emerging powers, which are actually major powers. There are old major powers, which are probably less than emerging powers today, but there is this disparity that exists. This particular idea of the veto that is now being discussed was mentioned informally, and as you know, the African community has very strongly opposed that particular suggestion. So I think this unequal status that we are trying to refer to, even if it's informal, will find very heavy weather in going through. There are different ways of looking at it because there will be some opposition, but I think the kind of groundswell that is now coming about, particularly from the global south, and this in a sense actually brings together not only the G4, which includes India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan as the candidates for permanent membership, but also 2 members from the African Union. And remember, the African Union now has a seat in the G20, which is another plurilateral body, where they find that there is an expression of the African Union. I think this will now begin to have a much greater resonance. But this is not to undermine the fact that China will continue to plug away with the coffee club so that there is opposition to any kind of reform. And I think if China wishes to stand out as the country that is standing in the way of reform, it's its right to do so, but it will have to be recognized for that particular initiative that it is now trying to spearhead. And I think the consequences of that, including its so-called championing of the role of a leadership of the global south, will be challenged, as well as it'll become another permanent member of a multilateral body of the United Nations Security Council, which is in coma. I want to bring in another aspect, because one of the things that our Action Point 39 says is a more democratic system. So I don't think it is only an expansion of the Security Council permanent members, but also of the non-permanent members. And the Action Point 42 refers to the interrelationship between the Security Council and the General Assembly, because what we've seen in recent times is that the General Assembly has been far more proactive and sensitive to the changes that are happening in the global peace and security situation. And the Security Council is unable to keep up the pace of the sentiment General Assembly. So that kind of democracy that is being talked about will have to find some kind of resonance. And if China wants to be the spoiler, it'll have to be recognized as well.
Okay. Let's take that point further of the veto power that we were discussing earlier. You've made your point, Dr. Rao, on that, but probing further, in the past we've seen that the P5 countries have displayed a habit of being non-committal when it comes to actual decision making on veto powers. Now, if I quote the former US Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs, Nicholas Burns, he had said in 2008 that we want to preserve the veto and we do not want to extend a veto to new permanent members. So do you think a piecemeal approach is the only way to go forward practically, or should veto be part of the package from the start? And then do we have a situation that in which some countries like India would be a member of an expanded UNSC, maybe a permanent member without a veto power, whereas the P5 will continue to wield veto power?
Well, I mean, as long as it's only the P5 that are wielding the veto power, the very idea of getting more members to the United Nations Security Council is actually defeated, because the United Nations Security Council already has a mechanism for getting temporary members, right, that do not have the veto power. And nothing really has changed in the world in the last so many years that there have been this entry and exit of non-permanent members, and nothing really has changed. So on the one hand, I do subscribe to the fact that if India is becoming a United Nations Security Council member without the veto power, it is going to be it is not going to be an equal sort of a status, and one has to be mindful of that. That's the first thing. But Munmun, I think there is fair amount of understanding that if you take this approach, if you take this really all or none approach, I think it would be very difficult to talk about any reform per se. There has been this idea that I think we should be discussing, which is that there is a group which is called Uniting for Consensus, and this is called the UFC group. And this UFC, which is Uniting for Consensus, is a powerful coalition which is led by many other prominent members of the world system, like Italy and Canada, Mexico. I may be forgetting a few, but Spain,
Pakistan
South Korea,
too, yeah.
Turkey, yes, all of them. And they have advocated that it is possible to reinforce the working of the General Assembly and all of that. Now, you have to look at it in two ways. Either we make the General Assembly more decisive. The problem out there is that the General Assembly resolutions are not binding by nature, versus the United Nations Security Council resolutions are binding. Okay, and that is what actually gives them this power,
legitimacy, yeah.
right? I mean, the difference in their status and the difference in the power they wield. So either you look at the United Nations General Assembly afresh, or you make a kind of a hybrid group, from countries that are more representative of the current global order, and you try. I mean, and that would amount for a kind of a reform in the United Nations, per se, which is that you give them more visibility, and you give them, this power that a consensus can build, right?
Okay.
And not a veto, because veto is fundamentally different from consensus. There could be 99 out of 100, a group of 100. Even if 99 are supporting one proposition, even if there is one veto, it stands flat. It's completely defeated. And that is why I'm saying that there is this, one has to change what the United Nations really stands for. So, whether the veto is going to decide the future of the world or the future of security issues, or do we really mean to substantiate the idea of consensus? Okay. So I think these are also larger, not just procedural issues, but also very value-laden issues. And I think I do not personally disapprove of the fact that a piecemeal social engineering of a reimagination of United Nations and the decisions that it takes is not a completely useless pursuit, because otherwise, I mean, we have lost the argument anyway.
Right, Dr. Rao.
Saying is that that one veto out there can be a spoiler and can be a non-starter. So I would have the opinion that something is better than nothing, and even though the change that we desire seems to be far ahead in future, but at the same time, we should try to build more consensus around the idea of consensus. We should try to provide more substance. I think that is where I would probably stop my remarks.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, Ambassador. And Dr. Rao, thank you so much for joining us. So there are more and more conversations at least happening on this topic, even in the United Nations. And the first ever Pact for the Future and the first ever Summit of the Future also brought this issue up and gave it prominence and importance. Remains to be seen if something substantial will happen anytime soon, whether it will be a piecemeal approach, an approach of all or none, or whichever approach the international community really desires from here on. We'll leave it at that. Thank you. The second edition of the Indian Ocean Rim Association seminar on illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing was conducted at the Naval War College in Goa on the 25th of September. The scale of IUU fishing activities in the Indian Ocean region, adverse effects on the marine ecosystem, collaborative strategies and measures for regional cooperation were deliberated. Delegates from 17 IORA countries, that is Indian Ocean Rim Association countries, including Australia, Bangladesh, France, Indonesia, Kenya, Madagascar, Mozambique, Malaysia, Maldives, Mauritius, Oman, Somalia, South Africa, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, Thailand and Tanzania participated in the seminar. Hurricane Helene slammed into Florida and Georgia on Friday, killing at least 4 persons and leaving over 2 million homes and businesses without power. Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida's Big Bend region on Thursday late night. The Category 4 storm struck west of Jacksonville, causing extensive damage with downed trees, streetlights and flooded neighborhoods. The National Weather Service said that life-threatening storm surges, winds and heavy rains will continue. Meanwhile, search and rescue teams battling surging flood waters encountered a house engulfed in flames as they looked for survivors. Fire department reported that emergency teams responded to over 200 calls and called in additional swift water rescue teams from Virginia and Ohio to assist.
We also this morning can report that there's been another fatality reported in Dixie County due to a tree falling on the home during the storm. Overnight, as soon as it was safe to do, and even in many cases probably wasn't perfectly safe to do, search and rescue operations were conducted to help people that were in distress and transport them to safety. These missions continue.
Today is World Tourism Day, a global celebration of the power of tourism to foster cultural understanding, economic growth and sustainable development. India, with its rich heritage, diverse landscapes and vibrant traditions, continues to be a top destination for travellers from around the world. DD India correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya brings us the special report.
On World Tourism Day, let's celebrate India's incredible diversity. From the majestic Himalayas to the serene backwaters of Kerala, with its rich history, vibrant festivals and stunning landscape, India offers an unforgettable journey for every traveller. So come explore the magic of India, where every corner tells a story.
You guys have all heard about the Wagah border, which has seen thousands and thousands of people thronging to witness those amazing drills that take place between India and Pakistan right at the border. But there is another place in Gujarat which is actually making quite a move, which has seen a lot of people turning up. It is called Nada Bait. It is in Gujarat, especially in Run of Kutch, and you can reach here by train, by road, as well as by air, and it is amazing. Located at the Patan district of Gujarat, Ran Ki Vav is one of India's finest example of culture and heritage. This particular structure was built in the 11th century, and this particular whole structure was rediscovered in 1940, and it was restored in 1980 by the Archaeological Survey of India, and it has been listed as one of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. Ran Ki Vav is a reminder of our rich heritage, rich past and rich culture that we are so proud of. If you are coming to Orissa, there is one place that is an absolute must visit, and that's called the Sun Temple in Konark. People around the globe throng to this particular place to get a glimpse of India's architecture marvel.
And that's all on the World Tourism Day. India's rich heritage and breathtaking landscapes await your exploration. Let's embrace the spirit of travel and discover the beauty that unites us all. With camera person Loknath, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for all the sports action. Day one of the second test match between India and Bangladesh was called off due to bad weather after just 35 overs of play in Kanpur. Bangladesh finished the day at a score of 107 runs for the loss of 3 wickets. For India, Akashdeep shined with the ball, dismissing both Bangladesh openers early in the first session. Nagpur's Divya Deshmukh was one of the vital cogs in India's win at the 45th Chess Olympiad. Deshmukh won 7 out of her 11 fixtures to help India clinch ultimate glory. In an exclusive conversation with DD India's Narayan Singh, Divya said that both men's and women's team displayed great team spirit at the Olympiad.
It was a historic performance by the Indian chess team, both in the open and women's section at the Chess Olympiad in Budapest. And right now I'm joined by Divya Deshmukh, who also won gold medal. Divya, congratulations, a superb performance by you. So the way the tournament panned out for you, how you looked the whole tournament, and you also played crucial role in some crucial juncture, and you were the, we can say that your wins were very crucial for the Indian women's team. So how you looked the whole tournament for the women's section?
I think the whole tournament was great. I think we had a great team spirit, and I am so proud of all my teammates. सबने जब हमें ज़रूरत थी सबसे ज़्यादा, we showed resilience, we showed strength, and I think we deserve to get the gold.
Definitely you deserve to get the gold because the kind of performance you people delivered. But considering the fact that last time when it was held in India, in China, Indian team won the bronze medal. So expectation were there. So definitely before the tournament, you people are expecting that definitely this time we will crack the code and win the gold medal.
I think I was just trying to give my best, and I had no personal expectations. I just thought, okay, India ke liye khel rahe, we'll give it our best, dekha jayega jo hoega.
True. So you people also met with the PM. So how was that experience?
Very humbling. He's so nice, so personal, and it felt like such a motivating. Just the whole experience, it was so motivating. He was so inspiring, and the fact that he knew us personally, थोड़े hints दे रहे थे वो. He knew किसी का birthday, he knew किसी का city, and it just felt like, oh my God, the PM knows us. So it felt like we had really achieved something.
And finally, one last question, and definitely the way the young generation of the Indian chess players are performing, they are dominating the world, defeating the top of the world players. So do you think in near future, definitely the way things are going now, we can witness a world chess champion final between two Indians?
Definitely, yeah. I think India is definitely one of the most strongest contenders now, and I hope to see that even in women's chess, India will be the top country soon.
Definitely, the kind of performance our chess player delivered in the Budapest Olympiad, we are hoping that definitely this momentum will continue and our young chess player definitely rule the world. With camera person Kumar Datta, Narayan Singh, DD India, Delhi.
So that's the perfect triumphant note to conclude this DD India News Hour on. But do share your thoughts with us on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Unman Bhattacharya. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.